Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to try something new today. We are going to review a video that one of my subscribers asked me to watch and break down, and I'm trying the whole streamy back and forth thing or whatever. So if you guys are actually seeing this, it was probably good enough that I decided to put out. It's my first sort of stream-ish thing using OBS or whatnot. I know some of you guys are into that stuff. I'm not. It took me 6 hours last night watching YouTube videos to get everything set up. Bear with me if it is not absolutely perfect. Let's get into today's video. Mr. Lotfi Ramal, I'm sorry, I know I butchered that, sent me a comment. Hi officer, hope you're doing well. Can you react and give your opinion on this video? Provides the link in your next video, please. To which I replied, yes, actually, that's a great idea. To which he replied, thanks officer, hearts. All right guys, so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna watch this video where the gentleman basically says it is too easy to become a police officer. So we're gonna watch it and find out if he is right or if he is wrong.
If you want to be a doctor, you have to go to school for 10 years. Why?
Because there's a whole lot of stuff inside your body and a whole lot of medications that react different ways with different things. There's tons of science to learn, chemistry to learn. People have all kinds of different blood types. People have different hereditary diseases. There's 10 types of cancer. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you have to go to school to be a doctor for 10 years.
Because your job is about life and death. But if you want to be a policeman, you only have to go to school for 5 months.
Okay, so it's 5.5 months if we're going to be critical of things. Longer in some places, but that is just the police academy, and we're going to talk about a very important point to that time frame here coming up.
Your job is about life and death.
Ooh, very dramatic.
To avoid it by now, this, and this is a problem.
Okay, yeah, the last one I'll agree with was a problem, but those first two were simply people being arrested. I don't see what the problem is with that. In fact, let's go back and actually just look at that real quick. So we have right here, yeah, a person's being handcuffed. No knees on his head, no knees on his neck. He's holding his legs because probably the person was kicking, so that's 100% fine. I didn't even see anything in the middle one other than a crowd that was a problem.
There are many reasons for it, but today I want to focus on just one. It's too easy to become a policeman.
Is it now? Says you? Have you been to the police academy? Do you know anything about it? That's one of the things that frustrates me about this job, and I feel like there are a lot of jobs, if not all jobs out there, that who are you to critique and tell what is or isn't about a job that you haven't done. I wouldn't tell a doctor how to do their job. I wouldn't tell an accountant how to do their job. I don't know how to do their jobs. I don't know what's involved. I don't know what kind of schooling they had to go through, what kind of training they've done, how many years experience they've had. I feel personally that's a very ignorant statement when these people get on here and they have their opinion of law enforcement. I'm not trying to say because I think it is some wonderful holier than thou job, which is what people argue when you say that. But my thing is come to work with me, do a ride along, see what it's actually like before you speak on it, because until you actually do this job, and I mean this genuinely, you have no idea what it's like. Perfect example, my most recent recruit. He wanted to be a police officer since he was a freshman in high school. Very smart kid, college degree, 5 years in the Coast Guard. So this is not like some just straight out of high school kid that doesn't know any better. Made it into second phase of field training with me and realized it's not for him, and he resigned just about a week ago. So it's a lot different than a lot of people think getting into it. Moving on.
Here is why. If you want to be a policeman in the United States, you don't even need a college degree.
Okay, this is the first thing that is incorrect. Some agencies do not require a college degree. That is becoming few and far between now. The majority of police agencies do require a minimum 2-year degree or 60 credit hours or prior military service. That, for the most part, is not completely accurate.
You need to graduate high school, and then you go to a police academy for 5 months and train for another 4 months. It is different from state to state. But on average, in 9 months, you can go from a high school grad to roam the streets with a lethal weapon. Is too easy.
You know who else can do that? Any law-abiding citizen that decides to go get their concealed weapons permit. That class only takes 1 day, and you can walk the streets as an armed citizen.
But if you look at other countries like Norway, they make the process much harder.
Because they have to step on people's backs?
Multi-year education. You need to spend 3 years learning at a police academy and then more time training on the ground to get a gun. This extra education could help explain why in Norway only 8 people died from police brutality.
Okay, so from police brutality or from just law enforcement related deaths? Because they're two very different things we're talking about here. Yes, we have more lives lost here in the United States. One, because we have guns. I don't think you are even allowed to have a gun in Norway, which is why the police have to do this crazy training to even be able to get a gun issued to them, which I will double check on. And you're also using the term by police brutality. There's a huge difference here. The use of lethal force for a lawful reason is not police brutality. I don't care if you think it is, it's not. Now, if you have a situation where an officer oversteps their bounds and uses lethal force for an unjustified reason, then yeah, that would be considered police brutality. If you actually found those numbers and ran them in the United States, I think you would find they're almost next to nothing.
Only 8. In the US, it's too easy to hire and too hard to fire. See, police unions make it really difficult to fire a policeman. That's why this guy, after 17 complaints against him, still was not fired from his job. And now his actions took a life away.
Okay, police unions, yes, they do have a certain level of power and they do make it more difficult for an officer to lose their job just from a random firing. It's a type of protection, and there are many types of unions out there. The auto worker industry has unions, so it's hard to get fired from a car plant as well. The unions are not unique to police or law enforcement jobs specifically. They're all over the country in various lines of work. So it's just a checks and balance in the system to basically make it so one person can't decide they have a vendetta against somebody and go ahead and just fire them because they feel like it and not have any protection. Now, also, you want to bring up the number of 17 complaints. All these numbers he's throwing out are super easy to look at on paper and go, oh my God, 17 complaints. But if we actually look at that, okay, over what period of time? If he's a 20-year officer, that's less than 1 complaint a year. I mean, people call in and complain on the most ridiculous things. So if you want to look at my personnel record, you could probably find 5 or 6 complaints in there, but they're unfounded. I've had people complain that I wrote them a ticket when they rightfully deserved one. That's a very broad brush statement, and with no information to back it up, what are those 17 complaints? It doesn't mean anything just to see a number on a screen.
Is a problem in my country too. Just like Black Americans, people like me, Arabs, suffer from injustice in Israel.
Oh, so you live in Israel. You don't even live in this country, but yet you want to explain to everybody why it's too easy to become a police officer here. Because you Googled it? How does that make any sense?
I respect the police. I really do.
Do you?
But I also think the police should respect us. And to do that, they can start by choosing better people at the front lines.
So this is another thing that you hear a lot. Oh, there should be better hiring processes. Do you even know what the hiring process is for law enforcement? It took me over 6 months to even go through the hiring process. Name another job that you can think of where just the application process to get hired takes anything even close to that amount of time. You go through background checks, you go through a psych exam, you go through physical testing. I had to provide the addresses of the past 5 residences that I had lived in from like 18 on, because a lot of people moved around where I only lived at 2 places, but they legitimately go to your old neighborhood and do a canvas. They knock on your neighbors' doors and ask them what kind of person you are, what they know about you. So these things that these people say, it's just too easy to get hired. Oh, we just hire anybody. What are you basing this on? I can tell you from the experience that I went through, it is not an easy or quick process. They are very selective about who they hire.
More educated ones, more empathetic ones. They exist, and you can see them right now trying to calm people down.
The only reason we're here is to make sure that you got a voice. That's it.
But that is not enough. As Chris Rock once said, you cannot have bad apples in an airline. All it takes is one bad pilot to crash an entire plane.
Okay, I've heard this reference a couple times, and I saw this Chris Rock skit, and I've actually wanted to talk about it because the thing that's funny to me about it, of why that is, you're comparing apples and oranges. His skit basically says when police screw up, they're like, we just have a few bad apples. He goes, you never hear that at Delta. It's like, most of our pilots like to land, but we have a few bad apples. Okay, haha, I get the reference that you're trying to say, but you fail to remember here, if a pilot decides to crash a plane, they're going to die as well. So essentially, you would have to have somebody who wanted to commit suicide and wanted to go out in some sort of blaze of glory to have that happen. So it's not like you said, you just have a few bad apples. Their literal life is on the line if they don't do their job correctly, which actually, just like police officers, our life is on the line in split-second decisions. And yes, some are not always going to be absolutely perfect, and nobody out there can be. But if you actually look at the statistics, we're talking in the high 90%, 98, 99% of the decisions made are correct.
There is one tweet that sums everything up so clearly, and it goes like this. In the world, we need to make it harder to be a policeman and easier to be a person of color.
Okay, that tweet is ridiculous to me. I'm sure there are people who would argue differently, but it is not as easy to become a police officer as one might think. And in fact, we're going to break down the actual numbers of credit hours and time it takes to become a sworn law enforcement officer compared to your actual 4-year college degree. And I think you're going to be surprised at the numbers. Talking about it to be easier to be a person of color in this country, I mean, here again, you're going to have people with stories on all walks of life. But honestly, from what I've seen, because of the atrocities that have happened in the past and the things that they've come up with nowadays, it's actually pretty easy to get things in life if you're a person of color, if you actually put in the time and effort. There's a long-running joke ever since I even got hired that as a mid-20s white male, I was the hardest person. I was the last person in the world that an agency wanted to hire. If you were a black male or a black female, if you went to the academy and you passed the basic stuff you needed, guaranteed hire. End of story, no questions asked. Okay? Plain and simple. So it's actually not that hard if people would actually put the effort in to achieve the things that they want. And there are millions of those examples across this country. You can find very successful people of color who have done things that you're supposed to do. They've had the same opportunities. The problem is we're comparing people who don't behave that way, people who break the law and commit crimes, to those others. And the same would be said for a white person or an Asian person or a Hispanic person. If you do what's required of you, the world's your oyster. If you commit crimes and you get arrested, and bad things are going to be more likely to happen in a situation like that. It's not rocket science. I don't understand why people can't wrap their head around this. I think they can. They just don't want to hear it because that completely nullifies all of their arguments.
See you next week.
You won't, because I'm not going to watch any more of your videos. All right, you guys, so that was his video. It was basically him talking over a bunch of story blocks clips that, he found on the internet. To me, the greater majority of what he said is just not accurate. A few of the things are close. Like he said, the police academy is 5.5 months, 6 months, give or take. I reached out on Instagram the other day and asked some people who are currently in college or just graduated while it's fresh in their mind of what's the breakdown to get your degree, like your 2-year degree, your 4-year degree. When you have a class, how many times a week do you go to that class? And then when you're in that class, how long are you actually at that class? One of the things you have to remember when you compare a college degree and longer term schooling to the police academy is your 2-year degree, your 4-year degree is all broken down into semesters, individual classes that have individual times that you attend them. And then that builds up to a total number. For a regular degree as well, you're also taking a lot of classes that aren't necessarily a core learning experience for the job you're going to get into. So if you're an accountant, you're going to have a certain amount of your classes that are going to be specific to that, mathematics classes and things like that. But when you're taking art history, that has nothing to do with being an accountant. The actual hours, if you break them down for your pure accountant learning, is much, much less than your actual overall degree. When you take the police academy, for example, sure, let's argue it's 5 months long. It's 5 months long, but it's 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. If you go to the full-time police academy, which is what the 5-month version would be, you're spending 40 hours a week there. And not only are you there for that extended period of time, you are only learning the core things to become a police officer. You're not taking art history or speech class or anything like that. Several of my Instagram followers reached out to me, so I really want to thank you guys at official Matt Ford, at Julian Arbolita, Brandon Rasso, Logan Esposito, Schwartz. A lot of you guys reached out, and I really, really appreciate all the information. So what I have for you here, I'm going to put up on the screen, was one of the best breakdowns, and somebody did all the work for me. And I went back and just kind of ran the numbers to make sure it was in line, and it was. That's what I'm going to show you now, and that gives you a really good view of what the police academy actually entails compared to an actual college degree. Let's take a look right now. All right, so if you look at this, it says they're going to use college class. It's 3 credit hours since it's the most common. For a standard 3 credit hour course equals 40.5 hours of instruction, which are required per semester. So the associate's degree is the 2-year degree. It's 60 college credit hours. 60 college credit hours divided by 3 credit hours equals 20 classes. So 20 classes at 40.5 hours a semester is 810 hours. You're going to spend 810 hours at school to get your 2-year associate's degree. Now your bachelor's, which is going to be your 4-year degree, 120 college credit hours. Breaking it down, we'll get to it here. So it's 40 classes times 40.5 hours per semester, which is 1,620 hours. 1,620 hours is going to get you your 4-year degree. Now, break down the police academy. So you're going each day, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which is 9 hours per day. So 9 hours a day times 5 days a week, 45 hours per week. So you're putting in 45 hours. An hour of that's usually going to be your lunch. So arguably it's 40 hours a week. By 24 weeks or 6 months is 1,080 hours of education for the police academy. So 810 hours for a 2-year degree, 1,620 for a bachelor's, and 1,080 for the police academy. What you have to remember in this situation is the police academy alone is just shy a couple hundred hours, okay? So yeah, actually, it's like 500 and... I'm horrible at math. A little over 500 hours, short of a 4-year degree. So you're almost, and this is just the police academy. So this doesn't even account for field training, which, like the guy said in the video, is another 4 months plus on top of that. And then even on top of field training, most agencies like mine, you do a 6 to 8 weeks of in-house training. So you go through another training program at the actual agency you're hired because they want to sign off on everything that they teach you. So yes, you're going to do defensive tactics in the police academy, but at my agency, they put you through another defensive tactics class that fit their policy and procedures, which is, I'd say 95% the same as the academy. That way they can sign off and said, hey, we trained you our way and we know you're good with it. Now throw in the 6 to 8 weeks of in-house training, 4 months of the field training program, and add it in to that. Now you're talking about more than what it would take to get a 4-year degree. This whole numbers thing, to just throw out a willy-nilly number of 5 months. Yeah, it's 5 months of 40 hours a week, hyper focused classes on specifically what you're going to be doing on the job. No mumbo jumbo, no political science, no other crap out there. When you actually break these numbers down, the police academy is the equivalent of a 4-year degree in itself, just crammed into a smaller package, I guess, because it's just crammed into a smaller time frame. In fact, one of the things they offer at the academy that I went to is a thing called the Academy Track program. It's a little over 2 years, I think it's around 2 years or a little over 2 years. What happens in that time frame is you get your associate's degree, your 2-year criminal justice degree, and the academy certification. So there's another example where if you just stretch it out, because those classes are done at night and a couple times a week for people who have to work during the day, who aren't able to attend a full-time academy like I went to. So the same academy, you can see, is easily stretched out over the course of a 2-year period. Throwing out 5 months, if that's all it takes to become a police officer, is actually, not that it's not accurate, but it's not the full picture of what people want you to think. All right, you guys, I hope this cleared up a few things, or at least shed some light on the overall process, and it is not nearly as simple as everybody thinks. I didn't even get into the whole thing, and I'll try and add it in here real quick at the end. We have continued training at work. We have monthly computer testing that we have to do. Every month I have to take a test or a class with an online test, all right? That helps keep my certification current. Every 2 years, you have to take a class on the communication system and privacy of, like, when you run people for warrants and everything, of like how that information can be disseminated, so on and so forth. So you have to do that every 2 years. We have in-service training at work every 6 months, so biannual. When you qualify with your handgun again, we do shooting drills. They do legal updates. There's verbal judo. We've talked to cops. Like, everything that is involved in our profession, we have continued training for your entire career as a police officer. If you really want to get into this sort of stuff, then I've also had, on top of all of the things we just talked about, another 15 years of continued education and training. The training doesn't just end. You don't go to the police academy for 5 months and then boom, you're a cop, and that's it, and there's nothing else to even think about. So, all right, you guys, that's my 2 cents on this situation. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And what do you think after hearing this breakdown of a little bit more detail? Do you still agree with somebody like this gentleman who's saying, like, it's just too easy to become a cop? Or does this sound a little bit more reasonable given the overall picture? I'd love to know what you guys have to say about it in the comments below. All right, thanks for bearing with me with this different, like, little kind of setup. I hope it worked. Fingers crossed. It may be clunky, so I apologize if it is, but at the end of the day, if it got the message across, that's all I'm trying to do. So until the next video, everybody take really good care of yourselves and stay safe out there.